acts just like blinders do for a horse. So me putting the hood on helps to prevent him from seeing really big, scary things, which is why I have the cart. Because when I'm driving in the city and there's big semis that come by, or if I stop at a stoplight and people are waving at him, or dogs, he's not real fond of other dogs. He doesn't mind my dog, but it's something he's known for a very long period of time. And the dog doesn't hurt him, so he's okay with that. But anything else might be a little bit frightening to him. Yes?
Isn't there a thing where when raptors are hunting, if there's a branch going up and down, their head stays in the same spot?
Well, they can. The question was if does their head stay in one spot with any other kind of movement of the body? And certainly with falcons or some owls, it does. If he's really fixated on something, I would be able to move his body and his head would stay in one spot. But what he's doing, he's very curious about a lot of stuff. It's also migration time. And with him being a male, the males tend to be a little bit more high energy than what the females do. So I think it's kind of a combination of a lot of stuff. This is called a rouse that he does, and he only does that when he's feeling comfortable. He won't do it if he's feeling really threatened by a real big predator that he views or something that's just truly terrifying to him. So to me, he's just saying he's very comfortable, but he still wants to fly. Because he doesn't have any wing injury, he just has that energy. It's like being on caffeine and not being able to tap your toe or jiggle your finger up and down or move. Sit absolutely perfectly still all the time. But there you can see those long pointed wings that help him to go into a dive or a stoop to help him fly and catch his prey in midair. And again, most of his prey is other birds, although they will catch and eat bats. It's really one of the only mammal species that they eat. Good question, though. Any other questions? No other questions. Well, for peregrines here at Frontenac, we had our first pair in 2009, and then a few years later, we banded 3 chicks successfully. It was very hard to get to the 3rd chick. We had no trouble with the first 2, but the height of the cave entrance on Rattlesnake Bluff was maybe only 1.5 feet tall. While we were processing and banding and taking a blood sample from the first 2 chicks, the climber went out of view. That 3rd chick started looking for his siblings, came out close enough for us to get our hands on them. But we do rely quite heavily on climbers, especially at any of the natural sites. Not only do they have to know how to rock climb safely, but they also have to know how to handle the birds safely. I know a lot of people that are really good rock climbers that have handled baby peregrines that are only 2.5 weeks old, where the bird doesn't move, and they're terrified of this thing because it screams at them more than anything. So having those 2 skill set is sometimes difficult to have. We have maybe 1/4 of our sites in Minnesota are all in natural locations. And so again, that's a real exciting part of this project. It's nice to have the birds on the buildings where you can go and see them on webcams and stuff. But to have the birds nesting back on natural cliffs where they nested hundreds of years ago, to me is the most exciting part of this project. It's where they belong. I love seeing, Rattlesnake Bluff is one of my all-time favorite bluffs. And it's a spot that Dr. Toroff and I would stop at every single March and swear peregrines would be back. And part of me wishes Dr. Toroff had gotten to see peregrines back at that cliff, because we spent hours watching. We have a nickname for Rattlesnake Bluff. It's named P-51 because Dr. Toroff flew a P-51 in World War II. So that's kind of my nickname for the cliff in reference to him. And I'm hoping somebody will be long helping and doing my job in 30 years when I get too old to be hiking up and down. Thankfully here we drive to the top of the cliff. It's not that hard. Yes?
Where's Rattlesnake Bluff?
Rattlesnake Bluff is, as you're heading out of Red Wing, it's about 8 miles south. And I want to say it's mile marker 60 or 80, 83. Adults make it, get those babies to at least 3 weeks of age, we can come in and safely band. And like I said, I had seen 2 babies being fed. And I felt very sad for the people that we had such a big group coming to watch us band from the park, and somebody else that helps me out with the project all drove, all coordinated, had somebody from the DNR office come, and we didn't have a single baby to band. And the first sign though was we didn't have any adults. And usually as soon as we crest into any open area, the adults start screaming at us. So not hearing the adults was not a good sign. And then finding they had laid eggs, and they definitely had young. But something happened in that 7 to 10 day week that I just don't understand. So it is a good cliff. I don't think the eagles are helping, but eagles need places to live too. It's just they got to figure out how to live together. So I'm hoping to band here again, because it is such a fantastic cliff face. To me, it rivals Queen's Bluff with sheer size. And just the historic nature of always having peregrines at the site. Yes, Sharon?
2 questions to make an idea about. Have you found that more experienced parents do better, or does it make any difference?
We haven't found that the experience level of the adults has any success or not. But because our birds are banded, we certainly have been able to keep track of longevity, how many young the birds are producing. We have some birds that came off of downtown Minneapolis that are nesting on cliffs. We have a cliff bird from Queens Bluff that's nesting up in Elk River in a nest box. We have Minneapolis birds nesting up on Lake Superior, up on cliffs. So all the band is giving us really valuable information to tell us where the birds go, how far away they'll go from the territory they fledged from, the number of young that they produce. This year was a really hard year, especially in the north. We had snow until the end of May. I mean, I had a foot of snow Memorial Day, which is unheard of, and I don't live that far outside of Duluth. We had hail, and it really hit the songbird population. And the chicks that we did have, we could tell just from observations and stuff to know about within a day or two when they'd hatch, because the science is to that point. But yet on banding day, they were almost a week behind developmentally. They were very small, very weak. We didn't find a lot of prey remains in the nest sites this year in our nest cliffs. And a lot of other raptors just seem to be coming down really in low, low numbers. Hawk Ridge isn't seeing the migration that we typically see. Red tail numbers are way down this year for people. So a lot of those species that are so reliant on songbirds, you know, if it hits them really hard, it's going to hit everything else up the food chain really hard too. But usually, once a bird makes it to adult, it's going to live another 8 to 10 years. The oldest known peregrine falcon, I learned this year, was a female we banded in Golden Valley back in 1992. She nested at City Hall for many years, and we just found her remains. She's 19 years, 10 months of age. And she holds longevity records for peregrine falcons in North America, not just the Midwest. And again, we know that because of the band she was wearing and because of observations. So the banding really gives us a lot of information. It tells us a lot of different stuff on how well or how poorly wildlife might be doing out there. So even with the delisting, we're still monitoring birds through 2014. And type in like City Center or Frontenac, and it'll give you any information off of anything from those sites. Or if you know a specific bird's name or band number, or if you find and see a peregrine that's banded, definitely contact us through Midwest Peregrine Society or through the state park. They all know how to get in touch with me, and then I get that information entered into the database. One of my babies I banded this year is down in Iowa in early September, which is very early for migration. She was seen in a nature reserve. So stuff like that, if we get the reports, and we get hundreds of reports from a lot of different people. Probably our longest migratory recovery was a bird that was banded in Indiana that wintered in Costa Rica. And we know that because of the band. We also have a bird that I just got a report of last week that was found injured down in Jamaica with a broken wing. So we're still tracking down her. We have the federal band number, we don't have the color band because the color band was hidden in the photograph behind a branch. But the guy's lens was so good, he got all 9 numbers of the federal band, but the federal government being shut down, we couldn't access those records. It was just a very small inconvenience along with things that were much more important during the government furlough. But things like that, if you come across a banded bird, you can enter it. And even when I found the bird from City Hall, she had lost her color band. And we had every number through photographs except for the last 2 band numbers. And we never even gave it a thought that she was one of our birds. We just figured she was a rehab bird that had been released by the Raptor Center or somebody in Wisconsin and just never left. Well, we found out she was a baby I had helped Dr. Tordoff band in 1992. Once I saw that band. So that was, for me, it was very exciting to know I had banded her as a chick and watched her nest for 12 years at City Hall, never knowing she was Josephine from from Colonnade Building. But she now holds the longevity record for a wild peregrine, which is very exciting for geeky biologists. We're into all that kind of stuff. Yes? Falconry birds, or a bird that's bred in captivity, does always have a band on them, but it's very, very narrow. It looks like a Ziploc tie for the falconry bands, and we put a piece of plastic tubing around it so it doesn't rub on the bird's leg. But the birds have to be banded and marked in one way or another. Also, I know the Raptor Center, they know me, they know I have this bird. If he dies or something should happen to him, I obviously have to report that to the state and Fish and Wildlife as well. And then I can either use him for education purposes or I can send him to a museum to be used in that way as well, which I think is just another way of continuing on to help teach people about why the birds are so cool. Yes?
How often do they feed?
How often?
How often do they?
For the female and those chicks until the chicks are about 2 weeks of age. And on average, a family of 6 birds from, say for us in Minnesota, say the first egg is laid April 1 through early July, 500 pounds of bird food is captured by those adults and fed to themselves and those babies. Those babies, when they first hatch, have to eat almost their entire birth weight every single day. So on average, single male doesn't have anybody else to worry about. He might need to eat a blackbird or a starling every day. A female might have to eat half a pigeon or maybe a third of a duck. They certainly go without food. For me in captivity, he does get fed every day, but I vary the amount of food and I vary his weight. So he's got about a 50-gram difference just because it's good for him. It's good for him to get that full feeling, but not get overweight, and it's good for him to be a little bit on the hungry side too, just to take pressure off his feet. That's one of the problems with birds in captivity is we don't have the ability to give them 1,001 perches to sit on, different tree branches and stuff like that. So they're very prone to getting bed sores on their feet because they're standing on their feet all the time. So if they get overweight, they get these horrible sores which can cause huge medical problems down the road. So it's better to have the birds just like us, be in really good physical condition and not be too overweight or too skinny. When they get too skinny or too hungry too often, they start getting really, really antsy and they just hit the perches really hard, which is kind of his problem. Not that he was underweight, but because he could fully fly and because he had had this foot wrapped because of the damage done to these toes, this foot was unwrapped. He's a little male, he has all this energy, and he was just hitting the perches so hard in flight that he then got problems on this foot. And always looking for donations to help us continuing with the banding and things in the monitoring project that we're doing. So stuff like that helps us with our cause. And just to have an appreciation for the birds, making sure they, along with other stuff, have plenty of wild space out there still left to live. So again, the state parks is great for that because not only do you have peregrines, you've got rattlesnakes and all these really cool flowers and bugs and stuff nobody really cares about, but they like peregrines. So if you like peregrines and you can save peregrine habitat, you're saving habitat for